Hey there, Blazer fans, and welcome to episode 23 of The Dragon's Den, a podcast for those that bleed green and gold. Today I have one of the great UAB football offensive leaders from the early 2000s, Mr. Andy Galloway. Andy played both right and left guard in his 4 years on the UAB offensive line. Andy shared so many great in-depth stories, so let's go ahead and get into the episode. Thanks for listening. All right, Blazer fans, I've got my guest here for episode 23 of The Dragon's Den, a former UAB football left guard and right guard from 2001 to 2004, Mr. Andy Galloway. Andy, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. About yourself?
I'm doing awesome. I'm very pleased to have you on the podcast. I know you were a huge part of the offensive line back in the early 2000s, back in the Watson Brown era, and you were, like I said, you were a big part in helping us get to that first bowl bid and huge part of the offense that had so many great members from back then. But thank you for your time as a Blazer.
Thank you.
I'll get my listeners reacquainted with you here. You were a Conference USA All-Freshman team member in 2001, first team All-Conference USA your senior year in 2004. By the end of your career at UAB, you were sixth all-time in games played by a Blazer. That was 43 games total. You were designated a permanent captain that year for the season, along with some of your teammates, Sam Dudley, Nigel Eldridge, Roddy White, and Zach Woodfin from that 2004 team, and you were an all-time UAB letter winner. So, Andy, what schools were looking at you coming out of high school, and what made you choose UAB?
Coming out of high school, I had actually committed to South Carolina and with Lou Holtz, and the coach that was recruiting me, he called me and I told him, hey, I wanted to go to South Carolina and go play. I had met Lou Holtz a couple times and, thought it would be a great venture. And he gave me the runaround and, then calls me back. And I think Lou was actually getting ready to retire. I just didn't feel right with it. Well, Coach Larry Vanderhayden, who was the offensive line coach there, he was my recruiting me out of Dothan High. And, he, even though I had committed, he stayed coming down to my practices, seeing me, talking to me, and was really interested in everything. And I just basically told him that, I felt comfortable with it. Felt like he was actually speaking to me truthfully. I mean, didn't give me a runaround on anything. And so I committed to him and told him, hey, yeah, I'm going to come play for y'all. A couple of days after I did that, it got into the paper. Well, then I get a call from a recruiter over at LSU. Nick Saban had just started there and everything. And he said he was coming from Auburn and told me that he thought I was just a junior. And for me, it didn't feel right, All during that, he kept putting down UAB. They're never going to amount to anything. They're never going to do anything. Never going to go anywhere. Never going to play for anything, and all this, and it just didn't feel right. And I told him, I said, well, I appreciate the offer, but I'm going to stay on my commitment. Went up there, and of course, like I said, Coach Vanderhayden was my offensive line coach, and so I knew him very well when I got there, and it was just it just felt like it was a place to be. It felt like home. Everybody I ever met there was just as nice as they could be. I mean, very welcoming. So, I felt like I made the right decision.
Okay, so what you're saying is that we got you for a steal, basically.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess you could say that, I had a couple other offers to Duke and South Florida, and I really wanted to stay around home, so my family, my parents were big time supporters of me. They didn't really care where I went, but they also wanted to be able to go to the games. And I liked Duke. I went up there for a visit, and I really loved the campus and everything. But I walked into there, and it just didn't do right. And then South Florida, they were just coming around. Like I said, Vanderhayden threw out everything. I had Georgia Tech. Went up there for a couple of times. Went all over the place for a bunch of different schools, but it was kind of funny. The one time I went to a UAB game was UAB versus East Carolina, and it was the game. I think East Carolina was actually ranked, and that was my senior year in high school. And I had a buddy of mine that was trying to get a kicking scholarship up there. So he asked me if he could go with me to a game up there, and I said, "Yeah, I get tickets, so we'll go up there." And I go up there, and I didn't think nothing of it. I was like, "Okay." And UAB actually won that day, which was actually really cool because But I was thinking, okay, I'm not really going to go here. But like I said, everybody I met was just as nice as they could be and everything. At the time, I didn't think that, okay, I probably ain't going to be going here, but I'll just, have fun with it. And I did. I had fun with it. And then next thing I know, I said, hey, with Vanderhayden, he kept at me, kept at me, kept at me. I finally told him, I said, yeah, I'll come, especially after the South Carolina thing. It was like, I felt like he was doing me right. So I haven't regretted it ever since.
Okay. Well, you mentioned LSU, and you redshirted your first year at UAB, which was the 2000 season. Did you make the trip down to Baton Rouge when UAB beat LSU, or were you back home?
Well, it's a kind of a funny story. The week of that, I was when I came in there, I was actually, Vanderhayden told me he wanted to redshirt me, and then I got there and I started doing pretty good, and I had made it up to like second string, and then during the summer and everything, well, a couple games went by and they were like, well, we really want to try to redshirt you, and I said, okay, I'm good with that. Well, the week of LSU comes in, and I can remember that Monday morning, I went and met with Coach Brown. I knocked on the door. He was in there watching film or something. I asked him, I said, hey, Coach, can I talk to you for a second? And he said, yeah, come on in. And I talked to him, and I told him that, hey, I'd really love to be on this trip this week if possible. I said, I know I'm not on the traveling squad. You can only carry so many players, but this one is kind of special to me because, I had the chance to go to LSU and I chose to come here. I really want to be, I told him, I said, I really want to be on the sidelines when we kick their butts. He said, well, let me see what I can do. And next thing I know, come Thursday, I seen that I was on the traveling squad, and I said, all right. We made the trip down there, and I knew I wasn't going to get any playing time, but it was breathtaking to take in. Being a freshman going in there, you're going in Death Valley where you got 100,000 screaming people. It was, I think the game was like a 7:00 game at night. So they've been up partying all day. I remember us driving up in there, and one of the stories I tell everybody, because we're sitting there driving by all the tailgates and everything, and you look over and you see this little girl that looks like she's maybe 12 years old. She's got on her LSU gear, and she's got a beer in one hand and she's flicking us off with the other. And so it was, you're like, wow. But you go into that place, and just the atmosphere from being there was one of the most memorable experiences of my life. Because like I said, you're going in there, 100,000 people. We come running up the tunnel, and they got the tiger sitting right there. They riled up. I mean, it was very exciting. And I'm sitting there watching the game right there on the field, and it was a really good game all throughout. And get down towards the end, and we're tied up with LSU. We can't believe it. I just remember us going at, sending our field goal kick team out, and we're all sitting there holding hands, and Rhett Gallego, he punched it right through, and it was good. And I mean, we rushed the field. I mean, it was amazing, to sit there and beat the team that later, I think the next year, actually, they played for the national championship, wasn't it? And I think they won it, or next year or two, I think it was. But just to be able to beat them like that, and it was actually one of the best experiences I've ever had at that time, and it was I'm truly blessed to be a part of that.
Awesome. Fast forward to your freshman year at UAB, it was kind of a roller coaster season. The team got off to a 2-1 start with wins against Montana State and a 55-3 win over Army, but you had a 29-7 loss at Florida State. What do you remember from those first few games?
Well, those first 3 games, it was kind of surreal. Like the first game, Montana State, we go out there and we're playing. That was my first game, Division I I've ever started. I just remember, our crowd going crazy and everything, and the caliber of team wasn't that great, and we were making a lot of mistakes, but we had a really good team. Next week we got Florida State, so I can remember like it was yesterday. We're going in there to the meeting, and Vander Hayden, he comes in there and he tells, he gives us the breakdown of their defensive line, and that's when they had Darnell Dockett, Kevin Emmanuel, and Alonzo Jackson. Mickey Andrews did a phenomenal job down there recruiting people, and he was a heck of a defensive coordinator. And I remember Vander Hayden just telling me, well, Galloway, you're going to get your test today because you're going up against an freshman All-American or an All-American. And I'm like, okay, well, let's see what he's got. Let's see what I can do, And I remember going into that game. I mean, I'm not going to say that I wasn't nervous as all get out, but I was. I was nervous as I can be because, that was my real first start, first NCAA welcome to football game. I just remember going up against, it was a Darnell Dockett. I set up on him. It was like one of the first pass plays. I set up on him, and I'm sitting there punching him, and that felt like I was punching a brick wall. I'm just like, holy crap, this dude's phenomenal. I remember one play in particular. He knocked me on my butt. I ain't gonna lie, he knocked me on my butt, but I didn't give up the sack because I stayed with him, and I, might have got my butt beat, but you weren't going to beat my butt all the time. And I didn't give up a sack in that game, which was by the skin of my teeth, I guess you could say. But I wish we could have done a lot of things different in that game for the caliber of team we had. I mean, we could have did it, and we had a great defense ourselves, but they can only play so long in our offense. We were a young offense that we just couldn't get the ball rolling in that game. And then we go into the Army. Army was always, we never really underestimated Army because they didn't know how to give up. They weren't taught how to give up. But they never had the caliber of players that most of the college teams had. We went into it, that's, I had 2 games under my belt by that time, and I'm thinking, okay, it's going to be good. I'm kind of nervous, but I always got a little nervous. But we actually came out and we started running. We could run the ball on them, and that was the big thing. Is we just kept running, and no matter how much it kept scoring. Those guys, I just remember, especially those guys, they never gave up. They never ever gave up. That was really, really something. But it was actually, because that was 2001, I believe. We were actually, I think, supposed to play Pittsburgh the week after Florida State, if I remember correctly, and that's when September 11th happened. We actually had 2 weeks to kind of prepare for Army because we didn't play Pittsburgh game got moved back to the end of the year that year. So after the Florida State, we kind of had a little bye week. So that's one of the reasons. But I remember that game as well because I remember Brown giving us a speech about these guys. They're, going into the Army afterwards and just how they're probably not going to be focused. And they really weren't, because of everything. But I just remember that game. I felt bad for beating them so bad, really, the way we did, man. But
No, I can't believe, like, I'm sure I was there. I would have been very young, but I just can't imagine being my age now and seeing that, like, in the moment. I bet it was really surreal.
Oh, it was.
Well, you guys followed those first three games with a 3-game losing stretch, 3 losses that included a 3-0 loss at Southern Miss, 24-7 at UCF, and a 31-17 loss versus Cincinnati. But you followed that with a 4-game win streak over Tulane, at Memphis, TCU, and at Houston. And all that ended with a finale loss, as you mentioned earlier, at Pittsburgh in a very close game. What do you remember really from the rest of that stretch to end the season for your freshman year?
The Southern Miss game was always that was always our one of our big rivals, and the loss after that one, and then the Central Florida, that kind of we were kind of like, okay, what are we doing? We kind of had a moment we had to come up, and we had, I think we went to TCU that year, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember if it was at home or not, but I think that was a turnaround game for us that did it. And then of course we had the rival with Memphis, and which was always a good little rival game between us. And it was kind of weird because Southern Miss always beat us, and then we always beat Memphis, and Memphis always beat Southern Miss. For the whole time I was there, it was a weird triangle that we had going on. So I guess it would be the last game that really stands out the most, was because it was a game. It was against Pittsburgh. It was at Heinz Field up in Pittsburgh, cold as all get out. It was surreal being there, playing on an NFL field in an NFL stadium and everything. But that's one of my biggest ones that I kind of remember out of that last stretch. The rest of them, like I said, the TCU, I remember it. We had some good games, and I mean, we had some good stretches. I think we just, if we would have done a little better towards the beginning, maybe that last one, Pittsburgh, would have done something that year. But we had a heck of a group of guys that year, and heck of a group of seniors.
Well, 2002 was your first year that you got to UAB that the Blazers didn't have a winning season. You guys finished the year with wins over Troy, Memphis, Houston, at Army, and East Carolina, and had several close losses. Southern Miss 20-13, Pitt 26-20, and Cincinnati 31-23. So what was your feeling, and what do you remember from that sophomore year?
I was very disappointed in the way everything turned out, because like I said, we had a bunch of close losses that we should have won. I wouldn't say that it was a losing on the record, but I mean, we fought tooth and nail for some of those games, and then some of those games it wasn't meant to be. It was heartbreaking, because we had a better team than 5-7 record showed. I think that's the year that I actually contracted meningitis, and it was at the Memphis game. We went up to Memphis to play, and I had gotten totally sick, so dehydrated that I couldn't, and started feeling better towards the game. Of course, they didn't play me, but then I got home and I had to go in the hospital, and I stayed in the hospital for about 3 or 4 days. Doctors finally figured out what it was, that I had spinal meningitis, and which was really scary. Something I don't wish upon my worst enemies. It was pretty bad, but I think that year it just, like I said, we had a great team. There was little hitches here and there that we just couldn't get over. I think that given any given day, if we would have had a chance to do it again, I think probably be a lot better than it was.
Well, your junior year, UAB's final record did stay the same at 5-7, but you guys seemed to make an improvement with a non-conference win over Baylor, and back-to-back 3-point losses to number 16 TCU and number 4 Georgia. Like I said, the record stayed the same, but you guys did show improvement. So how did you feel about the team after year 3?
That year was we had two different style quarterbacks. Our offense was going. We had a quarterback to come in and want to throw, and then we had a quarterback to come in and like to run. And like Georgia, I think if we would have came back and we were running the ball all over them. Artavius Williams, during the first quarter, he was going up against Georgia's defensive end. What was his name? Hope or something like that. He's an All-American. Got him taken out early, and Artavius Williams and Larry Coachman were doing a heck of a job over there with them. And I mean, we were running the ball all over them, and then we come back and we were trying to pass the ball, and us as an offensive line, we're sitting there, hey, let's run the ball. Well, then it was kind of got down to where we had to pass the ball, and I wish some things were done differently, but I mean, it is what it is. I mean, we had some close losses that I wish would have gone our way, and it just wasn't in the cards for us. So,
well, that year, and he was one of my guests already on the podcast, but that year you guys did see the emergence of quarterback Daryl Hackney. He really started to step up his game. He was out for that Georgia game, and that was one of the things he said he really wishes he could have played in, being from Georgia. Yeah. But what was it like to play with Daryl?
Oh man, Daryl was amazing. I'm talking about he was a class act from day one. He was just total motivator. Even when he came in as a freshman, he could just take control of the offense. And, I do believe if we would have had him probably during that Georgia game, we probably would have won that. But like I said, he was just an amazing guy. Smart. The guy could read a field and pick it apart. And his arm, I remember we went down Tulane. I think it was in the Superdome. And we get down there Friday, we're practicing, and we get done, we're heading to the bus, walking across the field back to the bus. And I just remember he's got a football in his hand, and we're all come out there and he's all talking. He gets down on one knee in the end zone, throws the football through the back of the other end zone on one knee. I saw that and I'm just like, wow, this guy's special. I mean, for anybody to have that kind of an arm to throw a football over 110 yards in the air on one knee, I mean, he really is. I mean, and Daryl he's a great guy. I mean, on and off the field, you couldn't ask for a better quarterback, and it really was an honor to defend for him and just to protect his back. And he crawled our butts a lot of times. We'd get out there and he'd tell us, hey, y'all got to step it up, and we'd step it up and we'd get it done. But my senior year is when he really blossomed, and I think we had a lot of players that year that just really truly blossomed and helped him out.
So speaking of your senior year in 2004, you guys started off really hot. You started off the year 5-1 with wins over Baylor, Memphis, Cincinnati, at Mississippi State, and of course the TCU game that a lot of us remember on national television. What were some of your memories from those games?
Well, out of that stretch, my biggest memory was the Mississippi State game. We went into Mississippi State, and that was one of the first games and probably one of the only games that my parents have ever missed. And my mom she had to have gallbladder surgery that weekend, and so they couldn't make it, and my parents were truly my biggest fans. I mean, they did whatever they had to do, and they seen me at every single game that I ever played in. That was the only game that they missed out of my whole career. I just remember that game, and I told the guys, hey, my mom's not here. She's gonna have surgery. And of course, everybody loved my parents and my mom and everything, because after the games we'd come over to the tailgate and she'd feed us all. And Mississippi State was Yeah, they were on the raw end of a conference where where they were always the beat up guys in their conference, but they had a good team. They had a really good team, and it was a really good game. I remember we going in. I mean, and just everything was clicking that day. I mean, we could run the ball, we could pass the ball. I mean, it was truly a great game altogether. And then I think that year was the year that Baylor, that for the first game, they came to us that year for the opener. We let the Dragon out, and it wouldn't stop for us. And I think Roddy, I think he had like three or four touchdowns that game. I mean, Nick Kuhn caught several, had a touchdown. I think Chavez, I think he had a touchdown. I mean, we were just rocking and rolling, and it was a special year. I mean, to be quite honest with you, I mean, we had a really big senior class. Zach Woodfin, Nigel Eldridge, Roddy, Sam Dudley. I mean, all those guys, shake it. That's what we called them. We all, I mean, like I said, that was really the first year that we got more to where we were more of a family, and it showed on the field because everybody hung out with everybody. We were a team on and off the field. I mean, and I think that was the biggest turnaround from the year before. We did everything. We all did everything together. We took control, and we said, hey, we're going to go to all our workouts. We're going to make all our workouts. We're going to get stronger. We're going to get better. And it really showed. I mean, it really showed that year. And Hackney was one of the leaders for that. He was just a junior, but he instilled the work ethic in everybody. And I remember, Zach Woodfin, that guy he ate, sleep, drank in the freaking weight room. So I mean, it was just inspiring for everybody to give it everything they had on the field and off the field. And I mean, I think that's what turned it around that year, and it really started to show in those first few games. And you could tell the difference. You could see that we were a special team, special unit. I think it carried on that year.
That was an incredible start to the year. I remember a lot of those wins. I remember it being at Mississippi State, and I remember it being super rainy and everything, but it was a super fun game. And to follow that awesome start, you guys did have two pretty rough weeks. You had a 59-55 loss at Tulane and a 45-20 loss versus South Florida at home in what's frequently called the monsoon game by the Blazer faithful. What happened in those games from your perspective?
Well, we'll start with the Tulane game. And the Tulane game, I really don't know, because I mean, it just seemed like it was one of those games that, all right, we'd scored, and offense would think, okay, next thing you know, they're throwing a bomb and scoring, and then we throw a bomb to Roddy and score, and then it was one of those battles towards the end. Defense, it seemed like they couldn't stop them, and their defense couldn't stop us until the end. They stepped up, but we made a lot of big mistakes that just it hurt us. And I remember Vanderhayden coming in, and actually it wasn't Vanderhayden that year, it was Herring, because Vanderhayden fallen off that year. He had retired the year before. Got it wrong. But Herring came in there, and he told us, hey, he rewinded. And I remember one play specifically that it was a long touchdown pass to Roddy. He just rewind the film, and we're sitting there watching the widescreen. You just see Roddy take off, and then, the ball's thrown in the air, and the next thing you know, Roddy just kicks in another speed, and next thing you know, he's 15 yards in front of the DB catching the ball, and you're just wow. And that's when he was just like, guys, we've got weapons. We've got to give him time, and we were going through a struggle on the offensive line at that moment, at that time. I want to say that we had an injury. We were rotate a guy in there. Something I think there was something like that he was talking about, because we weren't giving him enough time, and we were doing our best. I was over there on the left side. It was Cornelius Rogers. He was my tackle, and then Matt Bachuzik was right there towards the right or at center. Adam was, I think that was one of the first games he was starting or playing. And then Julius was at right tackle. And like I said, we were going through a rough patch there for an offensive line. But it was one of those games that, like I said, it was a shootout, and last man with the ball wins. And luckily, I think we did have the ball last, but we couldn't get nothing rolling there towards the end of it. And by that time ran out. And then, of course, the monsoon. Oh God, that one was, I don't know. I couldn't tell you what happened. I mean, it was a running game run the ball game, and it was just, South Florida. I got to give them credit, man. They were a lot better, and I think we just underestimated them or something. I don't know what. I think they had wanted some revenge, because I want to say the year before we went down there to Tampa, played them at Raymond James, ended up beating them, and I think they were kind of a little ticked off about that one. We couldn't get nothing going right. I ain't putting blame on nobody. We lost that game as a unit, and we went into it, and we lost it as a whole unit. And I mean, that's all I got to say about those two games.
Well, UAB won 2 of their last 3 games, with the loss being a heartbreaker at Southern Miss in the regular season finale. How frustrating was it to never get that win over Southern Miss while you were there?
Man, that is one of the reasons why, to this day, anytime I ever hear Southern Miss, a Golden Eagle, it makes me angry, because they were always one of the team that we just could not seem to beat, and it just, something always went wrong, or that we didn't get a call right. And I mean, I remember one year they called one of our guys, our offensive lineman, downfield, and we had just scored, called him for downfield when he's right there on the line, and we're sitting there watching it in film the next day, and we're like, how, but it's one of those things that you can't blame the refs. I mean, but that team seriously is probably the most frustrating I've ever been in football, because I've never lost to a team 4 years in a row. It's one of those things that we just couldn't, and it was always a close game. I think the biggest margin of victory was 7 points in the whole 4 years. So it was always one of those nail biters, and that's one of them games that, no matter what I'm doing, I'm always going to try to get to and make, because I want to be there. The year before the COVID, when we won, me and my wife were there, and it was a really great feeling to watch our boys beat them and seal the deal for the conference championship for UAB, and that was truly special, especially to be against Southern Miss. That was a truly, like, all right, but it's like I said, they're just one of those teams that anytime we play them, and it doesn't matter, we're playing them in football or baseball or badminton, I'm gonna root against them so hard.
Well, you guys did manage to earn a bowl bid. You went to the Hawaii Bowl and played the Hawaii Warriors. So what was the trip to Hawaii like?
The trip to Hawaii was, I mean, it was amazing. I mean, to be from South Alabama and never had the chance to go out of the country, which, I know Hawaii's still in the U.S., but to be out of the 48 states and be somewhere that I've only seen on TV or postcards or something like that, it was truly, truly amazing. I mean, just the place over there was, I mean, just beautiful. The experience of going to Pearl Harbor and witnessing, that, and being there with the team, and then, being at Pro Bowl Stadium and practicing Pro Bowl Stadium the whole week, and it was truly a great experience. I was always one of the ones on the team that liked to cut up and act a fool. And I remember one day at practice, they had the plastic all over the end zones, and it just rained. So I looked at it and I said, "Hey, man, that looks like a big old slip and slide." And so we're all out there getting ready to practice, and I think it was Cornelius Rogers, my tackle. He said, "You won't go do this. You won't run and slide on it." I said, "Watch this." I slid on it. And next thing I know, there's about 3 or 4 other people that are coming and doing it. But it was truly, I mean, it was truly an experience that I'm grateful to be a part of. I mean, it was um, one of the best experiences of my life. Like I said, my parents, they even, I think they took out a second mortgage or something to pay for it, but they made the trip with us and was able to fly on the plane with us, with the team, and got to be there. So that was a really, really cool experience. That I got to experience it with my parents, to be in there. Especially they're, like I said, they were my biggest fans. They got to experience that in their lifetime as well. So, and all the guys, we had a blast. We had probably had too much fun when we were over there, but some of the shows that they did for us, and we got to experience with the Hawaii football team, us as captains, we got to, all the captains, me, Nigel, and Zach, and Sam, and Roddy, and all Hawaii captains. We got to go to the children's hospital over there, meet a lot of the little kids in there, because that the children's hospital over there was for the whole Pacific region, so they would all come from around there, and they were in there, with cancer and stuff like that. But just to be able to get and see those kids and see the smiles on their face when you come in there, and got get to hang out with them, that was truly one of the best experiences. Signing footballs for them, and they probably didn't even know what football was, some of them, but just that we're there. I think that was, and you get to see them have a big old smile on their face. It was heartwarming, man. It truly was. It truly was.
Well, the end result for the game might not have been what you wanted, but what was it like to see all your hard work from those 4 years pay off to, get a first team all conference USA selection and a bowl trip to end out your college career?
Well, I mean, it was truly a blessing. I mean, I wish the game would have went a little better than it did, but it was great. I mean, I think the biggest part of it, though, I was kind of upset that we didn't win, because we had put in so much work, and like I said, that that team that year was truly something special. I mean, I there wasn't I wouldn't have got we wouldn't have gotten there if it wasn't for all the guys on both sides of the ball that got us there. I mean, yeah, I did a part, but like I said, it was a team effort. We all got there. It wasn't just one person getting us there. It was, everybody worked their butts off. Like, it started the day after that last season, or 2003 season, whenever we went 5-7. We got together as a senior group, and we said, "Hey guys, we got to do something. This is our last year. We're not going out like this again." So, we we got together and we all worked we pushed everybody to try to be the best that you can be. And, and I think that's the biggest thing is we left everything on the field, and it didn't turn out the way we wanted, but, we left it all out on the field.
We talked about a lot of games, some of the bigger highlighted games. But what are some games that might not get talked about from your time at UAB that you look back on and remember pretty vividly?
Well, there was one game that I remember very, very vividly. It was the Cincinnati game up in Cincinnati. I can't remember what year it was. I want to say it was 2002 or 2003. But I just remember going up there to that game, and it was in the middle of a blizzard. Me being from, South Alabama, never got to play in the snow too much. And so it was a true experience. I remember going out there that, in the first half, and it wasn't snowing too much right then. So I was just like, I'm going to go out there with no sleeves on. And the next thing you know, the blizzard comes, and I'm out there and I'm kind of cold, but I just remember that we'd get down in our stance, we'd be out there on the field, and the snow was coming down so hard that I'm sitting there in my stance and I can't even see the linebackers that are 2-3 yards away from me. All I can see is like their feet, and I don't see anything else on them. I mean, nothing else. So that was truly one of the best experiences. Of course, I wish I would have put my sleeves on, and I kind of did after the halftime. But I just remember that game sticking out in my mind just because, like I said, playing in the snow, everybody I know from South Alabama, you always dreamed about playing in the snow, kind of like you were on Green Bay Packers back in the day or something. Another experience, was the when we went up to Army. It always stands out in my mind. We go up there. We took a tour, of the campus and everything, and you get to see a lot of the campus and everything that's stood there for 200 plus years. To see all the history from that place, and especially when you went into the stadium and you see all the cadets come marching in, and they're marching them in single file. They all have their uniforms on, and they don't sit down for the whole game. You're just in awe, by just the tradition of that place. Another one was, going and playing in South Carolina, where I had originally committed to, and I remember I didn't actually start that game, but I remember going and just playing. I mean, being able to play against them and come in, and we didn't win, but it was truly just a great experience. And then, of course, doesn't beat the home games. Our fans are some of the best fans that we've got. I mean, our fans truly were the best. I mean, to come to our games and just, see the amount of fans that just religiously were there, that it was truly humbling. And like I said, that was one of the main reasons why I came to UAB, was just the family atmosphere that makes you feel like you're part of something big. And, I wanted to be that, start the traditions and everything that we don't have, and start a true football dynasty. I think we laid the groundwork.
Oh, you definitely did. I
During my
mean,
during my time there, I think we definitely laid. And there's so many guys that I played with that are responsible for that. I can't even name. Brian Thomas, Eddie Freeman, some of those guys that I went up against every day. That they were truly some of the best guys to ever play the game. And it was a real experience. And that's why I'm a faithful UAB fan, Blazer fan, always will be.
that's good. Switching gears here a little bit. What coach was the hardest on you while you were at UAB?
That would definitely be Coach Larry Vanderhayden. he definitely crawled my butt several times. You could ask any of the guys, he'd dog cuss you, but then, the thing about it is he'd dog cuss you, but then he'd pull you to the side and ask you how your mama and them were doing, and it was never personal when he dog cussed you. It was, he truly was a great coach. I mean, he'd coached for Clemson national championships. We hated him on some days. We hated some of the drills doing it. I remember, oh my God, every time he was obsessed with going down there. We had a backstop on one of the old fields it was right there beside the old meeting room, and he had a board set up on it that had a padded board, and we'd have to go down there and sit there and punch that dead gum thing. And then, that guy, he'd come in there and he'd go in there to the weight room every day. He'd be in there at 5 o'clock, and he'd get on the Stairmaster, and he'd be on that thing for an hour or more. And, you're sitting there like, man, this guy's, he was quite old right then, but he's sitting there just going to town on that Stairmaster. And I'm talking about just with and he'd come out there with his glasses. I remember we used to make fun of him so much about his glasses, but he didn't care because he had it looked like he had always went to the optometrist with his glasses, had the biggest sunglasses on, but he truly was one of I mean, he got on my butt so many times, but he really was. I mean, he molded me into a great player, and he molded a lot of guys, turned them into just phenomenal players, and I couldn't have asked for a better coach.
Well, speaking of another coach, what was it like playing for Watson Brown?
Watson was a really great guy. I mean, he was he knew how to motivate us. One of the things we all like to, say is gold paint, and we got that from him. I think it was a Memphis home game, and can't remember if it was Memphis or a Southern Miss, but he was sitting there and was talking about how we're going to lay gold paint on him. He was a truly great coach. I mean, he could have been a really great one. He brought UAB up from nothing and turned us into a world class team. And I mean, a lot of people have heard have tried to badmouth him and everything, and I've never really had anything bad to say about him. He was like I said, he was a great coach, and I really hated it whenever um, they got rid of him, because I really was hoping that they'd make him the AD, because I really think he would have been a great AD. Was trying to get everything started, but he just couldn't get any help from anybody. And I think if he would have had the support that he had, that Coach Clark has now there, that I think things would have been a lot different for him. A lot of people say, well, he didn't know how to win the big games or stuff like that, and I'm just, no, it's a team effort. He could recruit with the best of them, and he always got great guys in. So
Yeah.
I have to give it to Watson. He was a heck of a coach.
So, what were some of your favorite off-field memories during your time at UAB?
Some of my best off-field memories were going to some of the basketball games that we had, especially when we had Mike Anderson there, and we had a really great basketball team. I'd try to get there and be front row for everything. I mean, I truly tried to support all athletics. I remember we'd go to the synchronized swimming team and support them. We'd go to the women's soccer team and men's soccer games and try to support them. I'd go to the volleyball games and yell, and I might be the only one yelling, but hey, I wanted to try to support everybody, and that's what everybody always will told me that, well, you just got so much school spirit. And I said, well, yeah, this is because this is my school. This is my place. I can remember going to the UAB and Alabama game that we would have there at the baseball stadium, and I'd be right over there heckling. And it seemed like our baseball team really enjoyed it because, I'd get over there and heckle the guys, and especially sit over there and heckle the guy on third base, and it seemed to help them out. And we actually ended up beating Alabama. That was one of the biggest things I always tried to motivate people to do, was show more school spirit. This is our university. We don't have to just support, play here and come to school here. We can support everybody, because we're all Blazers. We all bleed green and gold, and that's what, if we want to start a tradition, which is, one of the things I want to do, we gotta do that. We gotta support everybody. And when they killed rifle and football and everything, it was like, what the heck, man? Of course, and we brought it back. But, that's one of the biggest things I want to try to accomplish is, get everybody excited about baby sports, excited to be a Blazer. That was one of my biggest things off field wise, was to do that, go to the games and matches and stuff like that, and support everybody that did, because a lot of them always came to support us. So I wanted to return the favor to them.
That's awesome. So, how is life now?
Life is good. Life is good. Like I said, I'm a correctional officer sergeant for Florida Department of Corrections. I'm happily married. Been married for going on March. Will be 6 years this coming up March. Life is good, man. I can't complain. I'm excited to go to Montgomery and watch the opener, and see some of the old guys that I hadn't seen in a while, and really excited for this new stadium. I cannot wait, and I cannot, just to walk in, even though I'm never going to play, I'm gonna feel like I want to suit up, but which, I'm way past that time of suiting up, but being able to go and see the groundwork that we started, and to see the new facilities that we have, and just the campus. Every time I go back on campus, there's something, they've added something else to it, and I'm like, it truly is amazing where we've came from in 20 years. I used to coach a little football before I started with the prison. Used to coach with Houston Academy back in Dothan with my old coach, Jimmy Addison. And then I coached here in Holmes County for the Blue Devils with Kevin Womble. He was a truly great coach, and it was a great experience, teaching young kids the game of football and basically the game of life. A lot of those kids, most of those kids weren't going on to play anywhere else or and anything like that, but just to get the experience with them and teach them a little, hey, this is what it means to have a little pride in your school and that kind of thing. That was a big thing for me. And other than that, just loving life.
That's good. How can my listeners engage with you now?
Oh, listeners, I mean, they can find me on Facebook anytime. Just if they want to shoot me a message, ask me a question, feel free. I'll be at the games tailgating. I don't know where we're going to tailgate at the new stadium, but I'm gonna find somewhere to tailgate at. Anytime y'all want to come over and get some food or something, y'all more than welcome to. Don't be afraid to come ask me, talk to me, and shake your hand. I might not know your name. If it's been a while, I might forget your name, but I'll never forget a face.
So I got a couple more questions, and then I'll let you go for the night.
Okay.
I got some social media questions. All of them are from one person I got from Mike Rowe on Facebook. The first question he had for you was, and you might have already answered it earlier, but who was the best lineman that you faced?
Well, that's definitely, I did answer that earlier, but I'll repeat it again. Definitely the best lineman I've ever faced was definitely Darnell Dockett. Like I said, that guy he was a beast, man. He was a beast. But that, like I said, that whole defense, they had, I think Bolware was a linebacker, went on and played NFL. You had Alonzo Jackson, that's gone on and played in there. No, the nose guard was Jeff Womble. He was a truly, truly great player. I mean, that whole defense, that 2001 Florida State defense was probably the best defense I've ever faced in my life. Definitely, Dockett was. Oh my God, he was he was a beast among men. But I mean, I've also, I got to give it up for Eddie Freeman and Brian Thomas, who I faced all year during practice and everything. I mean, I can remember coming in as a freshman and Brian Thomas and Otis Leverett just making me look like, especially Otis. Otis Leverett played, and I think he played for Kansas City a little bit, but he's coaching up there. But Otis, man, he was truly one of the hardest guys I've ever had to block. As when came in and Vanderhayden had put me at tackle, his arms were just so much longer than mine that he'd stab me and punch me, and I'd go out and reach for him. I couldn't reach for him. I couldn't grab him. He used to, in one-on-one drills, he'd make me look. He'd embarrass me, to be quite honest with you, because he just bull rush. Him and Brian Thomas would just bull rush me, and I mean, it was, those guys were truly, truly great players. I mean, Brian Thomas, he was a freak of nature himself. I mean, just the strength and power that he had was amazing, and speed. Oh man, uh, it was amazing. But in a game though, Darnell Dockett was definitely, he was the best player I ever played against.
His second question he's got for you: what was the biggest challenge in learning the offensive line position?
Well, your biggest challenge in learning offensive lineman is recognizing defenses and knowing what to do on the play, because you got to know, as an offensive lineman, you got to know, okay, what's this guy going to do if he goes there? What's he going to do if he goes this way? What's he going to do if he does this? And you got to make all those decisions in a split second. When the quarterback says go and the ball is hiked, you got to go, and you got to be able to make those decisions on the fly. You got to also learn how to adapt. Sometimes we had, for offensive line, we always had rules. Okay, on this play, your rule is gap down backer, which means, you got somebody in your gap, you take him. If there's nobody in your gap, go down. If there's nobody down, then you go up the backer. So you always had to know, okay, there's nobody there, I'm going to go here, but that linebacker's never going to be in the same place when he starts. He's always going to go somewhere else. So you had to know the right pass you had to take, and recognizing what defense they had. If it was a 3-4 defense, a 4-3 defense, a 3-3 stack. I mean, the variations. You had to see if the biggest thing was just trying to anticipate what this guy's going to do, what that guy's going to do, and everything. And that's probably the hardest thing, is just trying to know what you do on the play, but then executing what you do. So if there's any young offensive linemen out there listening or something, the biggest thing is know your rules. You'll know it. If you played offensive line, you'll know what I'm talking about when you say rules. Know your rules. And first step is key. First step is always key.
Yeah, his last question was, "What's the best technique that you have to learn as an offensive line?" Would you say that first step is definitely the key to that technique?
Well, yes, your first step is everything on offensive line, but the game of football is so broad and changed, throughout the years that everybody's going to a spread formation pass. So it just depends. It really depends on the type of offense that you're incorporating. And if you're more of a run game style, your technique for run blocking has got to be great. I mean, it's all depends on if you're doing what kind of run game you're doing. If you're doing a gap scheme, or if you're doing a say you're running a wishbone where you're down blocking a lot, where you got to use your shoulder and that, and or if you're doing a lead blocking where you got to use more hands. There's so many different techniques out there that it truly is. And then of course then you got your pass set and your pass techniques. You sitting, if you're coming out of a 2-point stance or if you're coming out of a 3-point stance, you got to know how to shift your weight. And one thing that Coach Vanderhayden always instilled in us was making sure we had on our pass set, and we had to flat back and chest out and let our mamas and daddies see our numbers. And I believe that I was truly a technician with my technique, because uh, I was never the strongest offensive lineman or the fastest, but my technique always seemed to help me out in blocking somebody. And it just depends on, like I said, what you're doing. If it's a pass play or a run play, and going with the technique that it calls for, you know.
Yeah. So, and my last question I got for you, it's a lighthearted question I ask all my guests. If you, and I'll kind of go with a simple one here, but if a genie granted you 3 wishes, what would you wish for? What 3 things would you wish for? And you can't wish for more wishes.
What 3 things would I wish for? If I had one wish, it would be that I could go back and maybe try to apply myself a little bit harder on some things, football wise, education wise. I wish I would have applied myself a little harder in that aspect. Of course, we're all going to wish for more money, but I feel like if I would have applied myself a little bit harder, those, you know, the second wish, I guess, I would be that UAB and Coach Clark. I hope wishes he stays around for a very long time and tries to build a dynasty. Kind of a Bobby Bowden type dynasty. And that we maybe hopefully can one day play for a national championship. Maybe, who knows? Maybe the NCAA goes to this new 16 game play or 16 team playoff or 12 team playoff, whatever they were talking about. And maybe we might get a chance to play for a national championship. I truly wish that UAB sees greatness in my lifetime, and I think we're on the right path. My last wish would just be that me and my wife, we live a long, happy life together. All my family lives a long and happy life. So I guess that'll be my third wish.
Those are great wishes, Andy. I really appreciate it. I loved hearing your stories. You went really in depth on them. I loved hearing hearing all the details. I felt like I was really there.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for your time, and thank you for all your hard work you did while you were a Blazer. And thank you for being a huge supporter now. And go Blazers.
Go Blazers. Go Blazers. Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. I want to thank Andy Galloway for being a Blazer both on and off the field. He was a leader on that offensive line in the early 2000s, and I really found it admirable that he wanted to support the other athletic programs as much as he did while he was at UAB. I really enjoyed talking with him, and I hope you guys enjoyed it too. But before I go, just a few birthday shout-outs in an abbreviated This Week in Blazer History. All of these facts gathered by longtime UAB fan Steve Rutherford, who can be found on Twitter with the handle @MemphisBlazer. These are the birthdays from July 5th through July 18th. July 5th, the first belated birthday shout-out goes to the late Alan Ogg. Allen was born July 5th, 1967, and was a huge part of the Blazers' success on the basketball court in the late 1980s. Sadly, Allen passed away in 2009, but I know he lives on in the spirit of the Blazer faithful, and many of the old heads in the fan base remember him well. July 7th, born 1972, Clarence Thrash. Clarence was a tough rebounding forward for the men's basketball team in the early 1990s. Happy birthday, Clarence. Also July 7th, born 1967, Jack Kramer. Jack was one of the all-time greats that played basketball for the Blazers from 1988 to 1991. His name is still all over the record books, so happy 54th birthday, Jack. Born 1978, also July 7th, Torrey Ward. Torrey played guard for the men's basketball team in the late 1990s. Tragically, Torrey was another Blazer that we lost too early. He was an associate head coach at Illinois State and had coached at 3 other schools before joining the Redbirds. He would have been 43. July 8th, born 1984, Ed Barrios. Ed played guard on the basketball team during the Mike Davis era from 2007 to 2009. Happy birthday, Ed. Also July 8th, born 1986, former guest on the podcast and forward from Memphis, Tennessee, Mr. Lawrence Kennard. Happy birthday, Lawrence. I hope it was a great one. July 9th, 1991, Carl Moten. Carl played guard for the Blazers from 2009 to 2014. Happy 30th birthday, Carl. July 11th, 1964, Anthony Gordon. Anthony was a solid contributor for the Blazer basketball team in the mid-'80s and still has his name in the record book in a few places, including holding the record for most games played. July 17th, born 1996, Lionel Love. Lionel played guard for the Blazers from 2014 to 2016. Happy 25th birthday, Lionel. And July 18th, born 1986, Walter Sharp. Walter played center for the Blazers for 1 year from 2007 to 2008. Happy 35th birthday, Walter. Before I go, I'd like to make one more announcement. I want to wish my deepest condolences to the family of Willie Quinney. As many of you know, Willie was a fantastic wide receiver for the UAB football team in the early 2000s. Sadly, he passed away on July 4th. I know that the memory of his playing time at UAB will live on with many of the Blazer faithful for a very long time. Once again, wish my deepest condolences to the family, friends, and players that knew Willie Quinney. And that's going to do it for This Week in Blazer History and episode 23. Make sure you check out my social pages at DragonsDenEFEL on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for all the latest episode announcements and UAB content. While you're there, drop a like or follow my page. Thanks for listening. Good night, and go Blazers.